Fran has the most generous spirit. If there's something that you are working on or working towards, this woman has got a nugget of wisdom and insight for you. And it is tried and it is true. And it doesn't matter how old you are, what stage of business you're at, whether it's personal or professional, there is so much to learn from this woman. I love our indigenous traditions in this country. They look to elders for guidance and wisdom. And I would say this woman is an elder in our community because she's continuously pouring into us younger women on how to rise up to the challenges that we're facing today. And it doesn't matter what lessons she has, they are applicable, they are relevant, and so you are in for a real treat tonight. So thank you, Fran, for agreeing to be here. This is a rare occasion to have Fran here tonight, and I'm so glad that you are all here to be a part of it.
So you built your best business on referrals. How did this happen for you?
Well, I said to my staff one day that everyone in Regina was a local company. And I said, you know, there were no Remaxes or Century 21s. And so I said, you know, we should have there's so many people transferred to Regina from Toronto and Calgary and Winnipeg and vice versa. We should have an agent there phone us when they're coming, and we're giving them 25% of the commission if we sell them something. Not the listing, but the selling. So I got on the phone and I phoned a company in Toronto, Bosley and Company. And he said, it's funny you should phone today. We're just joining All Points Relocation. It's in every city in the United States, 11 countries in Europe, and now we're going across Canada. So you're it for Regina. So 7 months later, I went to a convention for La Pointe in Washington, D.C. I sat in the front row, and the keynote speaker said, I can guarantee you the highest earners in this room are sitting in the front row. They can never learn enough. The rest of you are in the back, so you can go if you're bored. And then they said, the person who sent the most referrals around the world is Francis Olson from Regina. And we had 100,000 people there. And I beat all the people from New York and everything, because I worked every night phoning people and phoning them, where are you moving to? And they were so impressed. They made me a national director. They sent me all over the world to public speak. They put me up in the best suites. They picked me up in limousines. I was a queen. And that's because I made that phone call. So don't what if and think about it, act.
So you are now speaking all over the world, and you were asked to speak in London, and you offered, I think, 2 of your sales ladies, the top sales, could come with you.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was asked to speak in London, England. So Sheila Crowhurst and Gladys Collins were the top salespeople in listing and sales. And Sheila was 30, Gladys was 40, and I was 50. And I said, you're getting an all-expense-paid trip to go to New York for 2 nights, and then London, and then up to Scotland. I said, I don't know where to book in New York. I've never been there. So Sheila phoned a travel agent in Newfoundland and said, where should we stay in New York? And she said, the Plaza Hotel. So I phoned the Plaza and I booked 2 rooms, one for the girls and one for me. So when we got off the plane, I hailed a limo. There were no limos in Regina then. And we arrived at the Plaza Hotel in a limousine, which is the way to go to the Plaza. And we were extremely beautifully dressed. There were no pants in those days. We wore skirts mid-calf and a suit jacket and high heels. And we always had one really good leather bag and one really good leather pair of shoes, one good pair of earrings. And when we wanted to look hot, we would put that outfit on. So we were hot, we were all dressed beautifully. We walked up to the desk at the Plaza, and she looked at us and she said, "I'm sorry I don't have your accommodation. To make it up to you, I'm putting you in the Plaza Suite." And I said, "That's nice." I didn't know what the Plaza Suite was. It rents for $5,000 a night today. So we went up, and it's a big sitting room with 2 bedrooms and 2 baths off it. And the big, deep windowsills, we sat on them and looked out at Central Park. And there was a beautiful restaurant in the park. And we phoned down and asked about it. And they said, "Oh, you have to have reservations there." The Russian tea room, it was called. So I said, "Well, would you make us a reservation, please?" So magic happened everywhere I went. And should I tell you about this story in Banff?
Yes.
Well, I was asked to be a speaker for 9 years running at the Banff hotel. Put on, it was a seminar, a 5-day seminar, put on by the University of Edmonton. They had 10 men and me. And we spoke every day for 5 days. So I said to my husband, "Do you want to come? You can ski while I'm working." So we drove up and I walked in and I said, "I need a room." And they put me in a really crummy room with a chenille bedspread. And I have to, when you're a woman, especially if you're alone, you should always have a suite because you can entertain them and you're not sitting on a bed. You've got a sitting room, which is much better. So anyway, I said to the girl, "I like to entertain. I need a bigger suite." And she said that we have that. So I said, "Then I ain't staying here." And I left. I checked into a nice hotel downtown in Banff. That night, all the speakers were there from across Canada. And the manager of the CN Hotel from Montreal was one of the speakers. And he came up and said, "Frances, you're the only business person not registered in the Banff Springs. How come?" I said, I told him. He said, "Come with me." So he took me and introduced me to the manager. They both put their arms around me and took me up the elevator to 2 suites on the top. And one was very woodsy, more like Banff, so I picked it. And we had friends from Calgary coming down. And there were 2 bedrooms and this beautiful room. And so I said, I'll be checking in at 1 o'clock. I have to speak in the morning. And so when I got to the Banff Springs at 1 o'clock, the manager had the whole entourage of staff in white coats standing like this, aligned. And he greeted me and he introduced me to everyone. And I said, I need to speak to the maitre d' because I want to have a party for all the businessmen and the professors 2 nights from now before we quit. And so I arranged that and I said, I'm going downtown to get some flowers for the room because I like picking my own flowers. And I'm running out the door. This man came running after me and he said, pardon me, ma'am, who are you? And I said, I'm Francis Olson from Regina. Doesn't everyone know that? And he said, I thought you were Jackie Kennedy. So there's magic again. Things like that happen to me so much without expecting it.
In 1970s, we're going to go back to business, but we love hearing about, actually, no, I want to ask you about your clothes. You always did look fabulous. What advice would you give? Like, we can't afford to, buy all this clothes.
Well, the Army Navy's not there anymore. I can't have it. But there are stores around town that have incredible buys. I've got stuff in the Bay for 70% off and then another 10% if I'm old, and it goes on and on. You get it for nothing almost. So if you know how to shop, you can dress really smartly. And I think it's important because what is the first thing I told my staff? When you knock on someone's door to pick them up to show them a house, what's the first thing they see? How do you look? That's the impression they're getting of you. So I made my staff always wear business suits. Then when pants came in, nobody ever wore jeans then. When slacks, we called them, when the slacks came in, I said, okay, you can wear slacks if you wear a matching jacket. It has to be a suit. So I was really particular that we didn't dress sexy, but I used to vision, what does a businesswoman look like? What does she talk like? What does she walk like? What does she sound like? And before I knew it, I was that person. So you become what you think about.
Great story. Now we're going to go back to business. In the 1970s, this is a great story, and you had told it before, the Carlings O'Keeffe's building came up for sale. It was all over the leader post. What did you do?
Well, my husband said to me, read the leader post. There's business on every page. So I would rush home to feed 4 kids, and I got the paper in my face, and I'm burning food like mad, And I'm reading the paper. One day, on the front page, Carling's Brewery are going to sell for $1 million. And Carling's was just over the tracks on Albert Street. And I was the first woman president of Buffalo Days. So my Buffalo Days parties were always at Carling's. So I knew the building really well. So I put down the paper and I phoned a developer in Winnipeg that we had just developed a shopping mall here in Regina on Albert and Gordon Road, and Bonzini's used to be in it. So we were working with him. My daughter mostly, she went into commercial real estate. And we were working with him on malls, so I phoned him and I said, you have to buy Carling's. It's a steal for $1 million. Now that was in the 70s, and there still was a steal then. And he said, oh, I don't think I can afford it right now. I've got other things going. I said, if you don't say yes right now, I'm going to sell it to Albert Abdullah. He lived next door to me when I was a kid. And he said, well, I don't think I'll take it. So I phoned Albert and I said, Albert, you know Regina, buy Carling's. It's a steal. He said, okay. So I wrote up an offer, and I had sold the manager of Carling's a house. So I phoned him and I said, I've just sold Carling's, who do I give the offer to? And he said, well, George Solomon is our director here. Well, George Solomon just lived around the corner from Abdullah's and me on Olson Street, you know. So I knew him real well. So he said, I'm going to Toronto. The manager said, I'm going to Toronto and I'll tell them you have an offer. And so he phoned me back and he said, we'll accept your offer, but A. LePage gets the listing commission. And I said, what the for? And he said, I'm sorry, they're networking. That's what networking is. The manager of LePage golfs with the manager of Carling's in Toronto. I said, is that the only way I can get this deal? He said, I'm sorry. So take it to George Solomon and he'll sign it. So I did. Then my friend from Winnipeg came in and said, I just went and checked at Carling's and I want it. I said, I told you I was going to sell it. And he said, well, I'll kill the deal. And I said, how? He said, I know the manager of Carling's in Toronto. I grabbed him by the collar and I said, you kill my deal. You'll never do another job in Regina. And so he said, okay, I'll offer you $1,070,000 to Albert Abdullah. So I wrote up an offer for $1,070,000. I took it to Albert and I said, sign it, I just made you $70,000 and you haven't even given me a deposit. So he said, great deal. So my daughter was in Calgary taking a really hard 4-year CCIM course in real estate to learn how to sell commercial real estate. So I phoned her in Calgary and I said, how is your course coming? And she said, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, Mom. And she went through university too. And I said, well, while you're learning how to be a commercial realtor, I just sold Carling's twice in one day. And then we built the ball, we filled the ball, and then we sold the ball. So see what happened? Most of the realtors in town would phone Carlings and say, I want the listing. I phoned and said, I've sold your building. See the difference?
And we just giggle about it. So we're moving ahead now, 20 years. In 1985, you were 57 years old and you had an accident that ended your career. However, only a few years ago, you were quoted saying, your life is a divine miracle and that we all need to create our own miracles. So tell us about your life after the accident.
Well, my husband had a stroke, and 8 months later I had a big Sears 28-wheeler drive right over the top of my car, coming home from speaking in Olson. And I was in a coma for 3 months, and I had so much brain damage. They said I wouldn't know how to read or write or know anybody. I would be a zombie. So one day I remember waking up in the hospital, and my husband was in the room, and he said, you've been in a car accident. And I knew him. And I think what helped me a lot, I knew how to read and write. I couldn't talk. I had broken jaws and the teeth all out. And I was a mess. And they say if you've had brain damage, you will have Alzheimer's. Now, I'm 92 soon, and I don't have it, do I? So, I think I did everything to try. The doctors could only do so much. So I started doing Reiki, Tai Chi. I did Tai Chi for 25 years every day. And I think your fortitude saves you and heals you. I'm sure it does.
You, after the accident, life was different for you, and you and your husband moved away.
Or, you know, I almost look forward to adversities because every time we've had an adversity, if Ralph hadn't lost his job, that was an adversity to us. I would never have been Frances Olson. Right?
Right.
So, from every adversity, there's a seed of an equivalent benefit. So, when Ralph had his stroke, he couldn't talk, and I couldn't talk. We had to write to each other all the time. And so, it took 4 years and a lot of speech therapy. And then I said, I'm so lonesome. I knew everyone in the city. Everywhere I went, I would know everyone in the room. All of a sudden, you're home, and everyone thinks you have friends. That's when I realized the beauty of sistership. You have to have girlfriends. It makes such a difference. We moved to Cabo San Lucas. That was the happiest 9 years of my whole life. And if we hadn't had the adversities, the stroke and the accident, we would have kept on working thinking we're indispensable. And we never would have had that beautiful time. So
I think it's amazing that everything that happens to you, you have turned into gold.
yeah,
It really is. And the one thing that you said is, and Francis and I have met and talked about this, but you've said what you think about, you bring about.
yes.
And you've always surrounded yourself, this is the first time I heard about the girlfriends, surrounding yourself with girlfriends.
When I was in London, England, I had to go on a double-decker bus, of course, and I looked down, and we were at a stop sign, and there was a limousine, and you could see in the windows in those days. And I could see this little old lady sitting in the back seat with her leather gloves on her lap. And I thought, what a beautiful way to grow old. That's how I'm going to grow old. And one day in Regina, I'm in my limousine. I look down, I've got leather gloves on, I'm sitting there, and I said, I made it!
So every day is new for you. You continually grow. You are now a fabric artist. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, you know, I've done so many things in my life. I put an offer in to buy a hotel across from the Banff Springs, and I was going to run a hotel. So you don't know what you're going to be. And then another time, I put an offer in on a castle in Spain. And then I bought an island in the Bahamas. And everything you do puts you in another level of thinking and of business. So you don't, it's silly to say to people, what are you going to be when you grow up? Because you be many things. One thing will lead, when you have an adversity, you have to work like mad to overcome it, and 6 better things come because of it. You go into another kind of business. And I love fabric. I design and make most of my own clothes because I'm old and I'm fat and short. And how do you buy clothes that look nice on you? So, and I always thought I should have been a dress designer, but my mom and dad didn't know to send a girl to New York to study design. So you become a teacher or a typist, you know, or a nurse.
Well, thank you, Francis, for sharing your life with us today and Life Lessons with Fran. I think we could do this every Tuesday. Life Lessons with Fran.